Hello and welcome back to the Daily Bible Summary, where the goal is to renew your mind as we read a new chapter every day and ask, what can I learn? Today's episode is entitled, Like Father, Like Son. If you've read chapter 26, let's get started. As happened with Abraham, a famine strikes the land where Isaac is living. So he heads to Gerar, where the Philistines live, and Abimelech is king. Now, it might be concluded from the text that Isaac's actual destination at first was Egypt, especially since God appears to him, specifically telling him, do not go to Egypt. But God tells Isaac even more than that. God tells Isaac to stay in place in the land that he will show him, and that he will establish with Isaac the oath that he made with Abraham. God promises to give him all these lands and multiply his offspring, just like he did Abraham. He also says that in Isaac's offspring, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Why is that? It's because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Now, we might think of Moses as the lawgiver, but it appears that Abraham had a few rules to follow himself. This is also a good application for the people of Israel that Moses is leading, and for us as well. If you want to be like Abraham, your father, you need to keep God's charge, commandments, statutes, and laws. Now, if you know the story of Exodus, you know they were having trouble doing that. One might conclude that while God would fulfill the promises that he made to Abraham, that there were even greater and fuller blessings for those who obeyed like Abraham did. So Isaac settles in Gerar, and the people ask about Rebekah, his wife. Now, why Isaac would fall into the same trap as his father, I don't know. But he says that Rebekah is his sister. He was afraid because she was very beautiful. He thought they might kill him in order to have her. The ruse, of course, is discovered when Abimelech happens to see Isaac with Rebekah, and, well, their behavior was not like a brother with a sister. The word translated laughing in the English Standard Version, or caressing in the New American Standard Version, is really an uncertain meaning in Hebrew. But we might be safe to say that there was some sort of public display of affection going on. Whatever translation you use, the behavior was enough to get Isaac called before the king and rebuked for lying. Now, you've noticed the name Abimelech is the same as the king Abraham dealt with. But enough time has passed that we're certainly looking at his son, or maybe a grandson, or even perhaps somebody else entirely who adopted the same name. Had it been, of course, the first Abimelech, I'm certain he would have called Isaac out right away. You know, as the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you, but fool me twice, shame on me. So Abimelech gives orders that no one is to bother Isaac or Rebekah, and Isaac continues to live there. Isaac plants crops, and in the same year, he gains 100-fold. Now, don't confuse this with 100% or double what he started with. This is more like 10,000%, 100 times what he planted. As this was an unusually good harvest, where the usual might be 7 to 30 times, Isaac's was a lot bigger than that. Isaac is well on his way to becoming very wealthy due to his crops, his flocks, and his herds. Next, we see that Abimelech decides to send Isaac away. He's getting too wealthy for them, and as always, with wealth comes power. Perhaps Abimelech was concerned Isaac would want his throne. So Isaac leaves the city, but stays in the valley. He goes to the places where Abraham, his father, had dug wells, but the Philistines had, over time, stopped them all up. So as Isaac reopens the wells, it begins to create conflict with them. 2 times he digs a well, and the Philistines quarrel with him, saying the water is theirs. So finally he moves far enough away and digs a well that they don't quarrel with him over. So he names this well Rehoboth, because, as he said, the Lord has made room for us. After this, he leaves and goes to Beersheba. Now, do you remember what happened at Beersheba in chapter 21? It's where Abraham and the first Abimelech made a covenant. And here, God appears to Isaac at Beersheba to tell him not to be afraid. He promises to bless him and multiply his offspring for the sake of his father Abraham. Isaac builds an altar there, calls on the name of the Lord, and pitches his tent. Then we see Abimelech coming with his advisor Ahuzath and Phicol, the commander of his army. Just like with the first Abimelech, this commander's name is the same also. Now, there is a possibility that these names were simply titles rather than actual names, but either way, they went by the same name. Isaac seems surprised to see them and says they hate him, so why are they there? Abimelech assures him they don't hate him, but because God is clearly blessing Isaac, they want to form an alliance. An alliance. And that alliance was so that Isaac would do them no harm, even as they did not do any harm to him. They make an oath, feast together, and depart in peace the next day. And on that same day, Isaac's servants find water at the well they've been digging. He names it Sheba, and the city is called Beersheba to this day. Now the chapter ends on a note of conflict involving Esau. As he's approaching age 40, he marries two women, both descended from Hittites. These are people who live in the land. And you'll remember that Abraham specifically did not want Isaac to marry someone from the land, yet his grandson does just that. The text says that these women made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. So what is it that we can learn from this chapter? First of all, children often repeat their parents' mistakes. It's anybody's guess why Isaac decided to lie about Rebekah's relationship to him. And my guess is that Isaac likely had heard the stories about how Abraham and Sarah had done this. So he steps into the same shoes as Abraham. You know, it isn't enough just to be careful about the behavior we display around children. I mean, Abraham's failings happened before Isaac was born. So we need to also be careful how our past failures are presented to the children. It's one thing to admit sins and mistakes, we all have them, but we need to be sure that we don't present them in such a way as to give the impression that they were funny or that they worked out well in the end. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it." This works both ways. We train them in righteousness, or we train them in our failures. What are you teaching by how you talk about your past? Now, second, God blesses those who obey him. Notice what God says about Abraham in verse 5, that he obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Because of Abraham's obedience, God promised to bless Isaac, and he did. Isaac planted crops and reaped 100-fold. The Lord blessed him with wealth, flocks, and herds. Even when the Philistines opposed him, God made room for him. Obedience to God brings blessings. Sometimes, as with Isaac, that includes material prosperity. But always it includes God's favor and provision, and his presence and guidance matter much more than any amount of wealth. As Jesus says in John 14, verse 21, "Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he it is who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him." Now, a natural conclusion also would be that we need to spend time, like we do here, to read and understand God's will so that we can do it. Third, sometimes it's wise to avoid conflict rather than insist on your own rights. Isaac had every right to those wells. His father Abraham dug them. But when the Philistines quarreled over them, Isaac moved on, twice. He named the wells Esek, contention, and Sitnah, enmity. But finally at Rehoboth, room, there was no quarrel. Now Isaac could have fought for what was his. He could have escalated the conflict, yet instead he chose peace. Proverbs 17 verse 14 says, "The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out." Sometimes the godly response isn't to stand your ground. It's to walk away and trust that God will make room for you somewhere else. Are you fighting battles that aren't worth fighting? As always, we should pick our battles carefully. And finally, our choices affect not only us, but our families. When Esau was 40, he married 2 Hittite women, and they made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Esau's choice to marry outside of those who follow God brought grief to his parents. Our decisions, especially about marriage, friends, and values, ripple out to those around us. Whom we marry matters. Whom our children marry matters. And the company that we keep also matters. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 14 warns, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness?" Esau's choices brought bitterness into his family. What are your choices bringing? Tomorrow, Lord willing, we'll see how this family conflict escalates when favoritism leads Jacob to deceive his father. As we reflect on the lessons from this chapter about learning from our mistakes and trusting God's provision, we continue each day to renew our minds.